Hello, it's Sonia here, The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Tuesday, so that means it's Tunisian Tuesday. So today we are going to go over a Tunisian stitch technique. So I already have a swatch made up here that I'm going to show you. So obviously this is a chevron stitch, and I made this one using like the traditional Tunisian chevron technique, and then I kind of changed it a little bit because the traditional one, although it is super pretty, it curls like a beast. So, which is pretty common with a lot of Tunisian stitches. So I wanted to make a chevron stitch pattern design that didn't curl. Like this one curls just like a tiny little bit here. But if you were making this, let's say on a blanket, a good block would take care of that. So I just want to show you how I did that. So I am using my eye hook or 5.5mm hook, and I'm just using some basic worsted weight yarn here. So in the sample here, I used two different colors, and if you were using this technique for a project, like a blanket or a shawl, scarf, whatever, I do suggest using more than one color to really highlight the chevron pattern here. But I'm just going to show you how to do it with one color here. And this technique, and you can kind of change up the stripes. So like I did, you know, smaller stripes here and then a thicker stripe there. You know, you can definitely play around. It would be a really great project, a stitch pattern to use up, you know, different color yarn. Now, if you were using this stitch pattern for a, let's say a blanket, you will need to use a Tunisian hook. So either a long straight crochet Tunisian hook, or you'll need to use a hook with a cable on the end, like a long cord. But for the sample here, you know, just to learn the technique, we are just using a regular straight crochet hook. So let's get that guy out of the way. So this stitch pattern, you're going to need to chain a multiple of 14, and then you will add 1. So I am going to chain 29, and I chained 29 for my other sample there that I showed you with the two colors. Okay, so I have my 29 chains here. So for row 1, this will be our setup row. So we're going to work in the back bump of our chain. So we're going to turn it, and we're just going to pull up a loop in regular Tunisian crochet. So if you've never done Tunisian crochet, I do have an entire playlist that goes over the basics to get you started. And I would say this technique is, I mean, it's advanced beginner to intermediate. So if you've just learning Tunisian crochet, then maybe this might not be the stitch for you, but if you know have done a couple simple projects, then I think it'd be fine. But if you want to challenge, then definitely challenge yourself. So I am just pulling up my loops here, working in the back bump of my chain. And Tunisian crochet is worked in two parts. So each row consists of 2 steps. So the first step is you're putting your stitches on your hook, what we're doing right now. And then the second step, you will take your stitches off, and that will count as 1 row. Okay, so here we go. Here is our first part of row 1. So now we need to work these stitches off. So to work them off, we are going to yarn over. Oh, let me get my yarn there. Pull through 1 loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. Okay, so here we go. Here's row 1. So definitely does not look like a chevron at all. So now we're going to get ready for row 2, and that's going to be the start of the repeat. So for row 2, we are going to be doing purl stitches, and purl stitches are going to help with the curling. So normally when you're doing this technique, you would do it all in Tunisian simple stitch, which we will be doing with this pattern as well. But when I was doing it with a simple, it was curling, like I said, like a beast, like she does, and then you would need to do a really hard block. But, you know, you can certainly do that, but I wanted to see if I could do this without it curling as much, so we're throwing in some purl stitches, and I actually really like it. It does add some nice texture. So when we're doing the chevron here, just like when you're doing chevron in regular single, or not, you often do regular chevron stitches with single crochet and regular crochet is what I'm trying to say, you have to increase and decrease, and this is no different, so we're going to be doing that here. Alright, so to get started, we are going to yarn over purlwise because we are going to be increasing. So to do that, we're yarning over purlwise. So you're going to start off with having your yarn in front of your work, just like that. And then you're going to wrap it around your hook. So I'm going to go from the front of my hook to the back and pulling it front again, because we're going to be working a purl stitch, so we have to set up our yarn so that we can do that. And so our first bar here, our first vertical bar, we're going to work a purl stitch. And think of it as a sequence of 5, so this is stitch 1 of that sequence of 5. Technically we have 3 on our hook, but we're just concentrating on this purl stitch that we just made. And so our second stitch, we're also going to do purl stitches. So we're going to work a total of 5 purl stitches. We're going to have 7 loops on our hook. Okay, so we have 7 loops on our hook, and now, but we made 5 purl stitches. So now we're going to work a decrease stitch. So we are going to do a decrease across 3 stitches, and we're going to do it in purl, Tunisian purl. So your yarn's in front, and if you don't know how to do Tunisian purl, like I said, I have a whole playlist that goes over the basic stitches, and I consider this a basic Tunisian stitch. So I have my yarn in front. I'm going to insert my hook in the next 3 bars. So 1, 2, and 3. And we're just going to work that purl stitch around those 3 stitches, and so that is creating our decrease there. So now we are going to work Tunisian purl in the next 5 stitches. So again, my yarn is in front and working in that next vertical bar. So that decrease is going to create the first dip, the V there, because the chevron goes up and down like that. Alright, so we have, and there you can see my vitiligo really popping out. It's summer and it always goes crazy in the summer. I try to protect my hands, but just is what it is. So in case you're wondering why it looks like that. Alright, so let's keep going. We have to work 4 more stitches. Okay, so we have 5 purl stitches on our hook, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we need to make the top part of our chevron. Like I said, it goes up and down. So we created the first down, so now we're going up, so we need to work on the top part. So we have to add some stitches. So we are going to yarn over purlwise again. So yarn in front, we're wrapping it around the front of our hook, to the back, and to the front again. So we are ready to work the next purl stitch. So we're working 1 purl stitch here, and we're going to yarn over purlwise again. And now we are going to work 5 purl stitches. Okay, so we have worked our 5 purl stitches. So we've created, it doesn't look like it yet, but we went down, we went up, and now we're going to go back down again. So now we are going to work that Tunisian purl stitch decrease across those 3 vertical bars. So I have my yarn in front, so we've got 1, 2, and 3. And we're just going to work that purl stitch. And now we are going to work 5 Tunisian purl stitches, so we're getting close to the end of this row. So with Tunisian crochet, sometimes or any crochet stitch pattern or even a knitting pattern, it takes a little while for the pattern to kind of start to show. So if you're starting this and you're thinking this looks like a hot mess, it probably does, but I would say trust the process and keep going. So you just need to get a couple rows in and then it's like, oh, there it is. So don't necessarily think that you're doing it wrong, but you do need to keep track of your stitches, so just keep track of the 5. So we've worked those 5 stitches, but we need to add 1 more stitch before we work our very last one. So we need to do another increase. So for this last one, instead of yarning over purlwise, we're just going to do a regular yarn over because we are going to work like a Tunisian knit stitch in this last stitch. It looks like a chain there. We're going to work in the center. So we're not purling there, so we're just going to do a regular yarn over. So we have our yarn and we're going to wrap it up from the back like that. So just a normal boop yarn over, so don't overthink that. And now we're all set to go. Our yarn is in position to work that in that chain there. So right in that chain and pulling up our loop. So there is row 2 and we are ready to work these off. So we're going to yarn over, pull through 1, and yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row, just like normal. Okay, so here is our row 2. So you can kind of see it a little bit. It's not really looking chevron-esque. Is that a word? I don't think it is, but you know what I mean. And we're not achieving what we want yet. But as I said before, let's trust the process. So row 3, we are going to do the same thing as row 2, but we're going to work all in simple stitch, and that is the traditional Tunisian chevron way, is working it all in simple, but I liked mixing up the purl stitches to help it lay more flat, and I think it adds a nice bit of texture so that, you know, the chevron really pops out. So let's begin row 3. So row 3, we are going to yarn over, but we're not going to yarn over purl-wise, we're going to yarn over the regular way. So I have my yarn and just wrapping it around. Now I'm going to insert my hook in that first stitch, so it might be a little hard to see. That is our yarn over, and sometimes yarn overs can get a little bit lost in Tunisian crochet, so just be mindful of that. It is there. So if you are having trouble finding your yarn overs, you could use stitch markers, or even when I was first learning this, sometimes I would stick like little pieces of yarn, like kind of wrapping it around so that I could find the stitch until I, you know, got more familiar with what the yarn overs look like. So that's a little trick that you could do. All right, so my yarn over, we're going to work Tunisian simple in that first stitch. So that's stitch 1 in that sequence of 5. We're going to do Tunisian simple in the next 4, stitch 2, 3, 4, and 5, but we have 7 stitches on our hook here. All right, so now we're going to work that Tunisian decrease, but we're going to do it in simple stitch in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. So inserting our hook in those 3, 1, 2, 3. And working that simple stitch. There we go. And now we're going to work 5 Tunisian simple stitches. Okay, so here is a yarn over that's kind of getting lost in there. So you can see when there's a little bit of tension on that yarn, it can kind of shrink up that yarn over. So you just want to keep that in mind, but it's there. Insert your hook in that yarn over. See, it got a little tight. So that's why a stitch marker could be a little bit helpful if you're having trouble. And then work that simple. So we have 5. So now we need to increase. So we're doing our yarn over, and we're going to work 1 Tunisian simple stitch in the next stitch, and we're doing another yarn over, and now we're going to work 5 Tunisian simple stitches. So here's our yarn over from our previous row. Again, it's getting a little bit lost in there, but it's there. So you can see these stitches right here, especially because it has the purl. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 purl stitches are showing up very nicely, but then this yarn over here is kind of getting lost in the crowd, but it's there, so just be mindful of that. So we're going to insert our hook in simple and work that stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and stitch 5. And now we're going to work Tunisian simple decrease across 3 stitches. So inserting that stitch 1, 2, and 3, yarn over, work that stitch. So now we're going to work 5 Tunisian simple stitches. So there should be 5 stitches left until we get to our end. So here is stitch 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's that yarn over. Kind of looks a little hidden, but there it is, stitch 5. And then before we work in that last stitch, which looks like a chain right there, we have to do a yarn over. And let me tell you, when I was doing my practice swatch, I missed this yarn over many times, and I had to frog back and redo the row because I forgot to do my final yarn over. So don't forget to do your final yarn over as it messes up your stitch count. All right, and messes up the pattern. So we've got the final yarn over, and now we work in that last stitch that looks like a chain. Pull up our loop, and we have our loops on our hook, and let's work them off. So yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. Okay, so here we go. We finished up row 3, and if you're having trouble counting your rows, just turn it on its side. It looks like the ends of regular crochet stitches, or the tops of regular crochet stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. Pretty easy to count. So there we go. That is row 3. So you're going to be repeating rows 2 and 3 for however long you want your swatch. And if you are changing colors, I do suggest changing colors after a row 2, the purl row, because when you're purling with a new color, you get a little bit of a bleed through with your colors. So it might not make a lot of sense, but if you were doing it, you would. So here's my swatch here of my sample. So I worked my first 2 rows, and then I changed colors after the purl row so that there was no bleed through with the colors. Now, if you wanted that as, you know, you could certainly have the bleed through as a design element, then by all means you could do that. So I worked 2, 2, 2, and then I worked 4 rows here. So what you're going to do is repeat, as I said before, rows 2 and 3, and then you would want to end on a row 2 before you bind off. So I'll make a couple more rows here, and then I'll show you how I did the bind off. Okay, so I just worked 6 rows here, so you can definitely see the chevron starting to pop out even with just one color. And now we're going to bind these guys off. So we're going to bind off in simple stitch. So we are going to bind off in simple stitch in the first 5 stitches. So 1, so it's like a slip stitch you're working. 2, and again you always want to keep a more relaxed hand when you bind off. 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to keep with the pattern of creating that chevron here. So we're going down. So we're going to bind off and we're going to insert our hook in the next 3 stitches in simple stitch and just work the bind off there. So then that keeps with the pattern and helps us to keep our nice V there that we have. So, and now we're going to continue to bind off, just working across. So there's that yarn over was trying to hide. There's the other one. Okay, so we need to bind off one more and then we're going to do the bind off with the 3. So we worked in 11 stitches. So there's 10. We need to do one more. 11. And now we're going to insert our hook in the next 3. And then we just continue inserting our hook to finish up. We should have 5 stitches left. There's that yarn over there. And then we insert our hook into that stitch that looks like a chain. And there is our bind off. So if you were blocking this, what I would do, just to really accentuate the points, just kind of give it a little wet block, just kind of pinch those points there, and then you can see. But there you go, you can see the nice chevron, and you can see that she's laying flat very nicely. But you could certainly also try this same technique using all simple stitch. I mean, you could do it with knit stitch. I mean, you can definitely play around with a lot of different stitches to create some fun textures with the chevron design. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.